Hello, good to be with you again. Because as we come to this 33rd Sunday in Ordinary Time, and actually one more Sunday will be Feast of Christ the King, and we herald the beginning of Advent after that. But these last two Sundays in the church year seem to call out with the words about the end of the world. We have in the prophet Daniel these words that we hear at Scripture from the Sunday Mass. It shall be a time unsurpassed in distress since nations began until that time. And then in the letter, in the Gospel, I should say, the Gospel of Mark, the words of Jesus begin with these words: in those days after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon will not give us light, and the stars will be falling from the sky, and the powers in heaven will be shaken. It's amazing. It's so in some way distressing, these words of the Scripture passages, that we have to spend a few moments to really reflect and understand why they are being used. Now, it's interesting. I think we've all come across people, maybe even sometimes ourselves. We've said, everything's so terrible today. I just wish Jesus would come. And it's interesting. What does that wish of Jesus would come mean? It first of all comes from our hearts. That Jesus is the one who will bring, you might say, a definite glory and a definite love to the world and end this hate and distress and turmoil that we find. And that's why we profess every Sunday that Jesus is the judge that will come to judge the living and the dead. Because we believe that in that judgment we will find the vindication of what is right and the putting down of what is wrong. And we relish that because we want the good to triumph. We don't want the evil to triumph. So, you'd have to be, if you're a real Christian, you understand what that means in terms of Jesus and his coming into the world. However, some people are really preoccupied with this whole notion or idea of the end of the world. I remember, very early on in my priesthood, I was visiting, I think it was a nursing home, and I had walked out of one room. I was going to leave to go, leave the nursing home, and all of a sudden 2 young men confronted me in the hallway. Said, "Are you a Catholic priest?" I want to say, "What do you think? I'm dressed up for Halloween?" I said, "Yes, I'm a Catholic priest." They said, "What does your church teach on the end of the world?" I said, "What does my church teach on the end of the world?" I said, "Well, first of all, the Catholic Church teaches that there is an end, a glorious end with Jesus coming in glory." And I said, "But however," I said, "my church sides, you might say, with the Gospel of Mark. And the Gospel of Mark that we read today has a very interesting ending to it that's very important for us to realize. But of that day or hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. But of that day or hour, no one knows, neither the angel in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." Very mysterious wording in some ways, because how could Jesus, who we believe is truly God and man, not know what his Father knows? We say, on the other hand, in the Gospel of John so often, the Father and Son are one. So how could he not know? We'd have to say that part of the mystery here is the mystery of his humanity. And how does Jesus live out his humanity, and yet he is part of a divine person? How does he live that out in the concrete realities of the world? I think, on the other hand, there's another interpretation for this verse that's very important. That this is a mystery held in the deepest recesses of the divine mind, the divine providence. And why is that? Because it's really interesting. Think about this for a moment. If you all of a sudden received a sheet of paper and said, "This is your death date. This is the day the world's going to end." Could cause panic. It could cause you either to sit back and say, well, it's going to be so long, I'm not going to worry about it. Or you might say, oh my gosh, it's tomorrow. I got to get all these things in. I think maybe the Lord, in keeping us from this answer, and it really is not answered, there's signs all the time of something coming to an end. I mean, I've lived my short life, yes, is 73 years. I've been through a number of circumstances in terms of the church's life, in terms of our country's life, in terms of the world's life, to sort of wonder if something's going to happen, like it's going to end. And yet we continue on. But I do realize, and what's really important, is maybe the Lord hides this from us so that we give ourselves totally to the time we have before us, and that we don't put our dependence on a date, but on a God. Our dependence is not on a date when the world will end, but in the providential care of the God that loves us. And that, yes, when that glorious end comes, it will be something glorious. It's not something to be afraid of. It's not something that's going to be destructive. There may be destructiveness part of that day, but it's a day, you might say, of glory. And so we live each day in the mystery of God rather than worrying about when it's going to happen. We want to live each day so that God's love and joy and peace fills each day of our lives and the lives of those around us. God keep you now.